Rich Kamer. I'm a certified financial planner. I guess equivalent to, if you think of a CPA. So CPA, CFP, so same sort of thing, except one's in finance, one's in accounting. PPC, that just means a professional plan consultant. So I'm a wealth manager and I'm also a director for our retirement plans. And so that's what that PPC designation for. Then I do have a master's in art and education. I'm going to try to make it fun and exciting. I'm going to talk today about finance, personal finance, maybe some budgeting, why I use budgeting, maybe some credit scores. What's a credit score? How do I build my credit? Planning for the future, which you probably don't want to hear too much because I didn't when I was going to school, but something that is important, why it's important, why save. So, and as I go through that, like I said, ask me questions and specifically I can address some things. I know one person has a question about this stuff, everyone might be thinking that same thing. They don't teach you a lot of this stuff in high school, if at all. They don't teach you a lot in college, if at all. And even if you do go towards a finance degree or a business degree, they still don't teach you this stuff. That is more in the realms of corporate finance and business. So a lot of this is personal finance. So definitely feel free to ask me anything. I also, there's just some other stuff on here. My experience, so Pinnacle Wealth Planning Services, that's where I'm at now. I'm a wealth advisor there. So work with a lot of clients, manage their wealth, help them on estate planning and a whole bunch of other investments and stuff like that. I've also worked for a place called Cornerstone Wealth Management. Financial Peace University, has anyone heard of that? Actually not a university. So there is a, it's a budgeting course. So it's a 9-week sort of short budgeting course that teaches you how to get out of debt and sort of the basics of finance. So I've taught that. And then I was in charge of a chair of a committee at Miami University of Ohio, Emerging Adulthood, which was really neat because the whole point of that committee was to transition students in their like junior, senior years to real life. And it sort of applies a little bit here because you passed the undergrad, you're in grad school now, and maybe you're going to go into the world after that without school. So it sort of just, it was a lot of the same programming I tried to develop in this presentation as well. And then I also hosted a podcast and a YouTube channel called Budgets and Brew, and we talked about personal finance stuff while having a adult beverage at the same time. So that's sort of the background on me. Before, let's see, is it this slide? The agenda, which we just talked about, but why saving, building credit, paying off debt, stuff like that. So before I get into this next slide, I may be able to skip a couple of these. I just did not know really thoughts on the economy, or what's going on now. You probably all have social media or you get news from different outlets. Are there things that you're hearing about the economy, about the finance markets that you are just, I don't know, like what's going on in sort of your world? So I'm posing that to you for some feedback because in my world, I hear this stuff all the time and I hear all the new stuff. I hear the chatter, I hear the markets are up, they're down, this, and this. But if I step outside of that and I never walked into, finance, would I even notice what's going on? And so I pose that question to you. Have you all heard anything, or is it pretty much just your day to day and everything is good? Yeah.
Yes, but they always talk about the economy in terms of how many jobs are opening up, how much hiring is happening. Right now, there's a lot of focus and attention given to tariffs and stock prices, of course. So that really is the majority of the news that I get without trying to look much deeper.
Yeah, perfect. No, thank you. Yes.
I think what I've been seeing mostly on social media in terms of finance is how the cost of housing has increased so much and the level of income can't keep up with it. And so like people in my generation are going to have a harder time purchasing a house. Yeah.
They got all the same stuff on here, so you're spot on. Then anything else? I saw the, I don't know, the Zoom thing cracks down. Oh, go ahead.
So say if they have questions, put them in the chat.
Okay. Next question then I guess, follow up is, who has any experience with stocks or investing? comments? Good, good stuff. So I won't spend too much time on these slides. It just wasn't short. But here is a slide. I'll go back. So, real quick, when you hear or the news says the market, and they say the market is up, the market is down, we'll start off with what they are indicating is if you take a bubble and you put the top 500 largest companies into that bubble, that's the market, quote unquote. So we're looking at Tesla, we're looking at Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, now Meta, all of those companies, and then just go down 500 domestic, so American companies, and you put them all into one little bubble. And what happens is if Tesla their stock price is up that day, and let's say Google's down, and then another one's up and another one's down, and right, you have 500 companies, so they can't all, I guess they could all be up at the same time, but usually that's not how it works. Some are up, some are down. Then you sort of aggregate that all. And that one bubble, you say, was the average of all these companies for the day up, or was the average for that day down? That is sort of the market, because we can't keep track of all, I mean, they do, all these companies, right? But just as a quick thing, most companies were up today. Most companies were down today. And they just gave you a group of the top 500. That is what people say when they're talking about the market. That's when people say they're talking about past returns and future returns. And typically, over the course of an annualized return since the market was open, they've created this called the S&P 500. It averages about 8%. So 8% per year is what the market, these bubbles of stocks, should be averaging. And that is usually higher than a bank CD or a bank checking account or a bank savings account. So then I go to this slide right here. And so what this is you'll see the title, hypothetical growth of a dollar really invested in the S&P 500, the 500 largest companies. And it goes back to 1926. And you can sort of see the trajectory of that dollar, but just think of just the market. And there's ups and there's downs. And this really breaks it down into presidential terms too. Because you'll hear a lot of times once a new president is going to be running for office or elected, are they Republican, are they Democrat? Well, what's the stock market's going to do? Well, if a Republican's in, I'm pulling all my money out. Or if a Democrat's in, I'm pulling all my money out. Or, however, I'm putting all my money in. And this is a nice picture that just shows you over the course of time, no matter who was in the office, the market goes bottom left to top right. That's the trajectory. You could blow up any of those terms or multiple terms, and you're going to see dips within that. Right here. Here's one where you may be able to remember. That was really like the 07, 09, 08 housing. They call it the Great Financial Crisis. So that's when all the housing sort of went down and the economy went down, and you can see that dip, and then it sort of, it came back up. And what they don't really show you on here too, they do a little bit, COVID's right here. So there was a dip in COVID. And in 2022, there's another dip that's not in here, but that was when Russia invaded Ukraine. There was a little dip in there. And so you'll see the up and downs, but the trajectory is up to the right. And so I sort of just showed this slide. If you were in the market, if you were invested, that's where I asked you that question, you may see your account value go up and down. Because every up, you're gaining money in here, and it went down, so you're sort of losing money at the same time. But really, you don't lose anything until you sell. But hypothetically, if you put $1 in there, you can see that dollar has grown to almost $10,000 just with $1 if you had invested in the entire time. Neat chart. This one, really going off of that same chart, this sort of just shows you a little differently. But what's really cool about this is we'll just look at 1 year because it's pretty busy. So let's look at, 2009. Actually, we'll look at 2020. This is COVID. This year is COVID. These are just returns. So did your money get 20, remember I said average is 8, about 8 is what historically, 20% or negative. Well, what this does is it shows you the largest day gains and declines. So in 2020, the largest decline that ever happened that year was about 24, I think it's actually like 20, it's close to 30. It was like 29 or something like that. So almost a 30% drop that year. In the exact same year, the highest the market was up over, 80%. But where did it finish? So January 1 until the end, it finished right around up 30%. So, and you could obviously look at any year. Sometimes it actually finishes at the high point. Sometimes it finishes towards that low point. But this just gives you a good graph of in any given year, you're going to see a very high market possibly, you're going to see very low market, but here's where, they're usually finishing not on either ends of those. And this slide is encouraging to clients. It could be encouraging to you all too, to just know when you do get to the point where maybe you have a job, you have a 401k, you're going to want to invest more so aggressively. So more on that stock side, because you have a long time horizon to actually weather those ups and downs. And this is just showing you an indication is it's going to happen. You're going to see movement in your portfolios, in your returns, but just know the course of history. History can't predict the future, but it's good at guiding us, looking at what happened historically. And then this also hopefully more comforting too, to show you there's ups and downs, but it's not always where it's going to finish that year. And I think I have one more slide in here, and this just really breaks apart. They call them bull markets and bear markets. A bull market, the market is going to gain 20% or more. Bears is usually when it drops 20%. And when we're looking at the green, we've had over 1,000 months of bull markets. It's been in the green. We're positive. And then we've had 177 months of bear markets. And so once again, looking back at history, we can see that there's more green than there are, I guess this could use red, but this teal color. So when you all sort of really say is when you get that full-time job, or maybe you're having a part-time job now, and if you have an opportunity to really have that retirement plan, or 401k or IRA, some people actually open too, that gives you the capability to invest more money, your paycheck, portions of it, into these companies, which is that S&P 500, a whole bunch of other ones too, but that's just the most predominantly one that's known, and that really when you hear the term market, that's what a lot of the news outlets are talking about, is they're talking about that. So that was, yeah.
And just so people know, because this happens fairly regularly with your retirement funds when you have jobs. It doesn't just automatically get invested. You have to do or work with someone to do the investing. It just doesn't do it. So I think that's a misconception sometimes. So yeah, people.
Yeah, you'll definitely want to work. A lot of times, it's usually through like your human resources, but it's called like a participant enrollment, and you'll be able to meet with somebody who's going to sort of give you like a risk tolerance. How much risk do you want to take? How much, how conservative are you? And they'll help you with that, but definitely ask somebody for that help. And there's going to be somebody there, those companies that can help you and schedule time to meet with you, make sure you're plugged in. And then you want to choose what percent of my paycheck do I want? It could be 0 all the way to 100%. Probably don't want to do 100, but and you want to ask, that's the portion that once they do enroll you and you're logged in every week, it's going to come out. Your paycheck, and it's go into these funds that will grow, and hopefully your dollar could turn into 10,000 over a long course of time. But you won't have a dollar; you'll be putting more than that in there, so that's going to be more. That's how you sort of create that retirement for yourself. A lot of times, too, companies will offer what's called a match, and it will say, and it's an incentive to you all to say, hey, if you put $1 in, we'll also put $1 in. So now you're doubling your money. And typically you'll see a range between 3 to 5%. So if you put 3% in, that company might say, we'll also put 3% in. So anytime you can get free money, I would take that opportunity. So you want to ask your HR, or it could be incentive too, which job do I want to look for? It's sometimes not always that salary. It's what benefits do you have? I work with a company, they match 10%. So realistically, if the pay said $50,000 and they do a 10% match, really you're almost adding an extra 10% on there as long as you're contributing and they're giving you that money too. So it's a lot more than just the pay, what benefits do they have? And doesn't mean that you can't put in more. You always put in more. It's just the company saying, once you hit that point, we're done. We're not giving you any more free money. Oh, I also, I forgot I added this one. This is just a look back at some of the different recessions and how long they've happened. So the COVID, being the most recent one, and then that Great Recession or the Great Financial Crisis, that was the one in 08. And then we had the tech boom bubble, that was in 2000. And so it was just sort of a neat scale to see the average of this slide. The average is about 7.5 months. So not actually that long when we think of it. The Great Depression was pretty long. I mean, that was out there. But if you actually look at the average, they're not too long. So even if you hear the news outlets and they're talking about recession, know that they're pretty short in the grand scheme of things. And we could sort of get through those. Moves us into why save. And this is really where I started my, I did start the presentation without those charts last time. And I say that because there wasn't too much noise last time where it actually warranted some visuals and to understand how markets work and knowing that if we stay the course, we'll be good, especially for that one presidential slide. That was huge. It doesn't matter who your politics are or what they are. When we work with clients, we have clients on the left and we have clients on the right. And ones on the left, they hated the right and vice versa. And so that when I walked into a meeting, I never knew what I was going to get. And it really didn't matter at that time. I would show that chart. And I would say, this is what happens. Because if a president or any type of, if Congress, if they put a hurdle in front of a company, companies, I think, are a little bit smart. They have legal teams. And in order to put a law in place, it's harder to remove that law. And so what happens is you have these laws in place and these companies say, okay, how do we get around this law? And then after the course of time, they do it. And it's not, they're not like cheating or something. They're just doing something creative with their minds to work around whatever was put in their way. Because the goal of that company is to make a profit for their investors. And that's unfortunately, I guess there's good and bad to that. But that's what a company is really once they go public. Now they have shareholders of that company. They have a board of executives. And they're trying to figure out how can we make a profit for our shareholders. While obviously putting out the vision that we had for this company in the first place. And if there's something in their way to do that, they'll try to be creative to do that. And that's why a lot of companies persevere. I'll also say within that 500 that I talked about, the S&P 500, and sort of combining this persevering and the goal of that is companies that don't make it are pulled out of that 500. And it's basically an algorithm. Think of an algorithm. There's certain metrics that you have to meet, criteria to be in that group of 500. And if you fall out, you're just replaced with the 501st company. That's it. So you fall down to 501, they take that and they put 501, the original one, back into 500. And so it's almost, if you think of the market, it's self-cleansing. Because the ones who aren't doing good or dragging down or not performing, over time, they get cycled out and new people sort of come in. So it's sort of self-cleansing market. Going to pause there before I jump into this, but any questions on really what up to this point of Senate?
I guess I'm not all that familiar with IRAs or brokerage accounts.
Oh, so like what is that? Yep, and I'm going to get to, I'll get to that right now, unless there's other questions on any of that passed on. All right. So why save? So I talked about markets and how they work, and there's two forms of saving. One is for your retirement account, and that's predominantly what I was just talking about, is the market, right? The stock market, investing. The other one is just saving in a CD or a checking account or a savings account at the bank, because that money doesn't move. Doesn't do that. It pretty much just stays where it's at. If you need cash, you have cash. And so really talking about retirement specifically. And some of the things that you can use as vehicles to invest money on, and that's where it says what we will use to live off of. You see that brokerage account IRAs. 401k is pretty obvious. It's an investment account tied to your employer. That's what it is. It's just an account with your employer. An IRA is actually called a individual retirement arrangement, not account, but we usually call it an account. So an individual retirement account. And what that is saying, if I'm self-employed, I don't have a 401k. There's not a company, I mean, I work for myself, right? Or it might say I work at a company and they don't offer a 401k. The company, they exist. They just don't offer a 401k. There's a cost to it to the employer. That's what an IRA is for. You can open your own sort of quote unquote retirement account. It is a retirement account, so I guess I can take the quotes out. And it can say, I'm going to, if you're not gonna offer it, I'm gonna save for my future. You don't get a match on it, unfortunately, because you are the employer or your employer's not participating anyway. But it's a way you can take money and put it into this vehicle and invest into the market stocks. That's what an IRA is. A brokerage account is literally the same thing. It's an account that you can open up, you can put money into, and you can invest into stocks and bonds and stuff like that. The difference between the two are how they are tax treated. And that's really going in depth. The IRA, you don't want to touch that until you're 59 and a half. Typically the same with retirement accounts because you get a penalty if you pull out too early. A brokerage account, you can take money as you want, and there is no penalty. And so you would ask, well, here's the other thing, and with an IRA, there's a max of what you can contribute. And that max for you all is $7,000, and so it's adjusted for inflation, but right now it's only $7,000. So if you had 10, unfortunately, you could not put it into that IRA. The government does not want you to have the IRS too much of a good thing. So they're saying only $7,000, no more. The brokerage account, you can put as much money as you want, millions into it. So then ask you again, well, why would I just do the brokerage account? And it's because it's how it's taxed. So that retirement account, just like your 401k, just like this IRA, it grows tax-free. And when you put money into it, you actually take that as a deduction on your taxes. So if I put $7,000 in, my income reduces by $7,000 when I file my taxes. A brokerage account doesn't do that. Your money is taxed, put it into there, it's gonna grow, or it's gonna tax you while you grow, and then when you take it out, it's also gonna tax you again. So it's sort of like a triple tax, not bomb, but a triple taxed account. IRAs, they're just taxed once and they're tax deductible. They're only taxed when you take the money out. So that's the difference between the IRA and brokerage account. But if you want access to money, you would put it in the brokerage account. Or if you filled up all of your buckets, maxed out your 401k, you maxed out your IRA if eligible. I have more money, but you could then put more in a brokerage account and it will still earn and grow and invest. So those are investment accounts. S over there is Social Security. Social Security, who has all heard of that? Or knows what it is? Any guess on what it is though?
Social Security is basically a government and collecting through things such as tax is money that goes towards providing social services as well as towards retirement.
Yeah. I mean, you're really spot on with that. It's tax, absolutely. So you get your paycheck, and it's going to be less than what the number actually says at the top. Your gross, that's the gross number. It's going to be less because Social Security is going to take, I think it's 6.5%. They're going to take 6.5%. So they're going to pull that out of your paycheck, and it's going to go in a savings account that you never see. So it's almost like you're sort of saving for your future self, but you don't really know that. And then once you retire, you hit a certain age, you claim your Social Security, usually 62 to 70. That's the age that you could say, give me my money. And it could be reduced or it could be greater depending on, just think if you claim early, 62, it's going to be the lowest paycheck. If you claim at 70, it will be the highest paycheck. But it's really up to your situation. When do you need the money and do you need the money? And so that's Social Security. And so then they give it back to you in a form of a monthly check. They say, all right, you worked X amount of years. Here's your average pay that you have earned amongst those years, we're going to give you some of it, not all of it, unfortunately. But we're gonna give you some of that back in a monthly payment. So, great. So that's one way that we can live, because at this time, we're sort of fast forwarding to our future is we don't have a job. We've retired, right? So I retired, how do I get a paycheck? How do I still pay for my property taxes? And my mortgage if I have one, or a new car and clothes and all these other things. Social Security, they'll give me some monthly income. I have my 401k, if I saved in it, I might have a brokerage account, and then I put savings in here, just boring old cash. So really, that's how we really fund our life going forward. And what I put on here, and we'll see this compounding example in a second, but inflation is supposed to be 2%. That's the Fed's goal, to keep it at 2%. So things cost, right? Like more and more every year. And they're hoping that everything that costs 2% more every single year. It's going to grow. So things will never go down. Mostly it's going to go up. Well, inflation for us, you've probably seen eggs have been not raising at 2%. Eggs are what? They were like $8, I think, at one point, $7. You know, things happen, and maybe they're coming down now. But or car insurance, that was up. When COVID happened, prices went up. So it fluctuates. It hit 9% in 2020, 2021. Now it's back down right about threes, a little under threes. But our goal is for saving and retiring is to at least make our money make it at least 2%. Because if we take that dollar and we put it under our mattress, we lose because inflation is at least 2 higher. So that dollar is worth less and less and less every single year. So we have to at least make 2% just to keep up with that, because we project that out for 30 years. Our dollar is really going to shrink. So we have to have it grow. And so that's why we're using those 8% returns, I would say, on the S&P 500. We're using those vehicles along with maybe some savings accounts and a combination of things so our money can grow. So usually what we put in, when you think of the word millionaire, how did somebody get $1 million? Did they actually physically save $1 million? I'm going to go with the average millionaire, because you might have a Jeff Bezos or somebody, an Elon Musk, that they got billions and it's just ridiculous, and they probably did eventually earn some of that. But the typical person that's trying to save and needs to retire did not save $1 million from their paycheck in their pocket. They probably saved $250,000, and it grew to the million, and now to the billion. So another thing I like to tell a lot of people, especially younger people, because I was this person, I said, there's no way I'm going to save $1 million. My paycheck is X. That's a lot of paychecks in order for me to get $1 million to live off of. But then I started realizing, well, at 8% returns, or sometimes 10, or even less, like over the course of 40 years, you have a pretty good compounding money. And all I needed was 100,000 to get to the million. And so that was like, ooh, I can do this. And it made sense to me. That sort of actually reversed these going back up. So what's retirement? When can we retire? When do we have $1 million or 2 million or whatever your number is going to be? Because everyone's situation is different. Do you have kids? Do you not have kids? Do you have to take care of maybe your parents when you're older? Do you not? You know, things. Is it a year? Is it a number? It's really a combination of both. But I would say it's probably age range. People usually do that when you get that Social Security. They like to retire when they can turn that stream on, because that's guaranteed for the rest of their life. And so usually 62 to 70, you see people retire. But if someone gave you $10 million tomorrow, you could retire tomorrow probably. And you don't have to go through any of that. You don't care about Social Security. That's why it's a combination of both. So I'm going to show you a compounding. I guess I'm not, an inflation example. We talked about that 2%. This is just going back to 1970, a cup of coffee for 25 cents. If we fast forward today, $1.80, hiding behind that a little bit there, but that was 22, $1.85. So we know it didn't go down, and it never went down. It's going to keep on going up. We could fast forward this to 2040. That cup of coffee is going to be a lot more than it is today. So that's why we need to have our money keep up with that. And then this is a compounding example. When I talk about, I don't need $1 million, I just need 250. In this example, I'll use this little, if we look at this first, this gentleman right here, he saved $1,000 a year for 10 years. He stopped. 25, this dark green is his principal. That was the money that he put in. He stopped right here contributing that principal. You can see it stretches across and it's always at $10,000 total investment. At 8% compounding interest over the course from 25 to 65, that money grew to $157,000. So in this case, he only saved 10 and he got 157. I take that deal any day. And the more obviously you put in there, 20, 30, 40, this number is gonna go up, 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 and up. You look at this gentleman, he saved $10,000 for 30 years. 35, you can see this green, this keeps on going up, 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 and up. So his total investment was 30,000, which was more than this gentleman. He only got $122,000. Now, over the time frame, it would go up, but this just shows you what starting early does. He put less money in, but because he had 10 more years of compounding growth, his money more than doubled the principal of the other one. That other one had 10 years less, and they put more money in and they had less. So that's sort of just like the math of interest and compounding and how that works. And where this money is going, the stock market, that's what this 8% is. And it's showing you that if you put your money in there, going back to that very first slide, there's ups, there's downs, but if it averages out, it's about 8%. In 2023, or 2024, sorry, at the end of that, so for year 2024, the stock market was up 26%. In 2023, it was like 25%. So we had two back-to-back years of, 25% returns. That's great. However, there were some years where it was negative. So that's why it actually, averaged that out. But you need both of those to get that average. Questions up to this point? That was a lot, one sort of topic, but a lot bundled into it. Talked about Social Security, talked about a little bit of investing, your 401k. Gonna move along. Okay. So, this is, if we're just saving to save, not investing. So this is just you maybe today. We want to have some type of emergency fund. Things can happen in life. You're gonna get your apartment, you're gonna get a house, you're gonna get something, you're renting. So you want to be safe, have that cash in case something breaks. Usually you aim for about 3 to 6 months of basic living expenses. So really what are my necessities, my monthly necessities? I need food, gas for my car maybe, I need to pay my insurance, my rent, whatever that is, you add that up and then just multiply that by 3 or 6. That's what you should typically have in just cash. In case something happens, you lose a job, at least I know for 3 months, I'll be good because I have this cash pile. We don't want that in the market because we don't want that to just go down maybe 1 year. It's like, oh no, that was my save, right? So this is our safer stuff. We don't want this in the market. We want it to be liquid. I can access it today, pull that money out today. And don't have to worry about this one, but sometimes you want it away from your checking account. So checking, savings, maybe I just want my savings. Because if it's in the checking, you see that usually go up and down often because you're paying bills out of it. Your Netflix subscription or Spotify. So it's going to be moving. You want it somewhere where it can just stay there. And if you look at it, it will stay the same unless you contribute. It's going to go up. So usually I recommend just in a savings account. You can get that anywhere in a bank. And here are just some of the things that come up as emergencies. So car problems, tires, dropped your phone, computer issues, lost your job, speeding ticket, things like that. And that's what that account is going to be for as well. Where do you keep it? We talked about a savings account, but there are better savings accounts and there are worse savings accounts. A savings account, you're going to win regardless. It's not going to do much. It's going to sit there. However, if you're like, let me see if I can add a little bit more juice to the squeeze, they have these things called high yield savings accounts. A lot of times those are online. As long as it says FDIC insured, you're good. And they offer a higher interest rate. Right now, Betterment, which is a place, that offers this, they're giving you 4% of your money. That's better than that inflation number, you want it to be 2, that's double it. Apple, if you invest with Apple, they get 4.4, almost 4.5. You'll see that fluctuate. That number will go to 3, that will go to 2, it might even go to 1, it might go back to 3. It will never go negative, and it will never, I guess it could go to 0, but usually it gives you like point something. So right now, that's what the rates are, but those will move up and down. But if you can get a little bit more, like I said, juice for just having your cash sit there, why not? That's no risk. It's a risk-free investment. You don't want to keep them in CDs. Yeah, so, and that's why I put here on the do not keep your emergency fund there. Because if you need the money, you got to break it and pay the fee to do it, and so it's not worth it. Usually, the longer you have a term, I want a 6-month CD, I want a year CD, 5-year, 10-year. The farther you go out, the more interest they're gonna pay. Because you're giving up access to that for a longer period of time. And then, yeah, and it's pretty much locked up in there. Certificate of deposit is what those are called. Investments accounts, we told you not to put them in there because it was up and down, right? Those are the stocks under your mattress. We talked about that. Why? Because you lose money to inflation. It's gonna beat you every time. And then I just put a checking account, because remember, I still don't wanna see my account go up and down. I want it somewhere where I can just, I know my cash is there, I can see it, easy peasy. We're gonna move to another topic. We actually, we made it to a new topic. That's what we covered in the first section, I feel like. Now we're gonna talk about credit. So credit is financial trustworthiness. Why do you need credit? If I wanna go buy a car and the car salesperson is gonna run, they're gonna run my credit, that's what they're gonna do. And let's say I wanna buy a Mercedes and it costs $90,000 and I'm Joe Schmo, I'm off the street, hi, I would like to buy this. And they're like, great, do you have cash? Oh, I don't know, 9,000. Oh, so you want us to give you this car and you're gonna pay it back? And I said, yeah, absolutely, trust me. I got a job. And he says, okay, runs my credit. They look at this number system, the number system right here. And it is a quick way for that company to see how trustworthy I am. If I have an 850, he's gonna say, not a problem. You have it takes a lot of work to get an 850. Like you gotta have payments on time, you gotta have multiple lines of credit, you gotta be spot on. And it's a longevity thing to get to that 850. And so if he sees that, or she sees that, they're gonna say, absolutely, sign this dot because we know he's a good buyer. And because he's so good he's gonna pay us back, we're gonna give him a lower interest rate. So when you buy something, it works completely opposite of when you save. Well, in a sense, it's the same exact thing, but they work one's in favor for you, one's against you. So when we buy something, they're gonna apply that interest rate. When we were at a bank, if the bank was paying us 4%, they're giving us 4%. So I got $100 and they're gonna pay me 4% every month, let's say. Every month comes around, the bank's like, here's your 100 and here's $4. I was like, oh, I didn't do anything, that's passive income. Next month comes along, here's your 100 and here's your 104, actually whatever 4% on 104 would be, that's compounding, it's what, you know, so they're gonna give me that. It works opposite. If I buy a car and they say, all right, $100,000 car, and we're gonna give you 4% interest, well, now that's $4,000 extra I have to pay if that's monthly on both monthly, but if that's annual, 4,000 every year on top of the 100 I had to pay until that's paid off. So it works against me. So I want a lower interest rate. If I have good credit, I'm gonna get the lowest interest rate I would be able to get on a car or a home. When you look at a home, that 4%, that's a lot bigger on an $800,000 house. It's a lot of money. That's sort of compounded. If I have a poor score, 300, the lowest, right, 300, they're gonna say, no, I'm not gonna give you this car. You're not getting this loan. It's so bad. Your history shows that you don't make payments. I'm gonna have to call a repo person. They're gonna have to take the car back. I'm gonna probably have to go to a court to get this. It's a lot of money. I'm not even gonna give you this car. You gotta pay cash if you want. And if you're in the middle, they'll say, all right, fine, you know, you're 670, 669, I guess I'll give you the loan, but I'm gonna charge it 10%. Because I don't know if I'm gonna get my money back. Yeah, I might get it back, but at least if I do, I'll get the first half of it back and you're gonna give me a lot more money. And we'll know real quick if you're not gonna do this or not. So it's a number that they assign to you. It's sort of stupid because it's like, they don't know me. What if I really am a good person? I'm trying to build my credit. I don't have a score right now, right? Unfortunately, that's just how the mechanics work, and whether we agree with it or not, we can't change it unless we obviously do some mass, I guess, get like committees together and lobby and all this stuff. So anyway, it's the game that we sort of have to play. But you need it for possibly renting, getting a phone. They run your credit if you want your own phone line. Utility companies, if I buy a house or if I'm in an apartment, they're gonna run my credit to see, like, do we want to, here's the utility, bill, my gas bill, my electric, things like that. Some jobs, I applied to be a police officer, they ran my credit because they don't want a corrupt officer. If you were a bank teller, they might run your credit. They don't want a 300 feeling money working in a financial institution. So there's a lot of different reasons why you want that. And so I'm just gonna go through how to build that credit for you so you can have that 850 score. But actually, you probably don't want the 850 score, and I'll tell you that in a second. So here are some ways that you can establish it. Add it as an authorized user, that's the first one. So only if whoever it is has good credit. So like when I was a kid, my mom and dad had a credit card, they added me as a user. Now I'm actually getting credit based off of them. So I'm like, Mom, pay your bills. Like that helps me. If they did the opposite way, my credit would tank. So it sort of just follows their trajectory. Easy way to do it. A secure credit card. A secure credit card is, let's say I have no credit. If I go to the bank to apply for a credit card, they're gonna say, no, I'm not giving you one because you don't have credit. You can ask that bank for a secure card. What that means is, they're gonna give you a credit card, but there's a cap on it. Let's say it's $500 and you have to give them $500 first. So it's pretty much like a gift card. Here's $500 bank, great. Here's a credit card, it has a $500 limit. So if you spend that down, I'm paying it back, right? So I spend 300, I gotta pay back 300. The bank still has that 500 the whole time. And so now I'm sort of working off my own money. But if I'm making these on-time payments, that's building me credit. And then after a year or two, you go back to the bank and say, hey, how did I do? They said, you did great. Now we'll give you a real card. Here's your $500 back. Thank you. Now I've established some credit. Now they're gonna most likely trust me if I was good with that because I could show them I have proof I can pay it back. That's a secure card. Credit card, obviously, if you apply for it and you get approved, a cell phone plan, you can start there. That will, if you get on your own line, you're gonna start building credit. Small loans, if you buy a car, maybe a used car, or take out a personal loan. There's pros and cons with all like a personal loan, but that builds credit. A cosigner. So let's say your mom is gonna cosign you for a loan. They're basically saying if Rich doesn't pay this, we're coming after you. You cosign and we're coming after you. You have good credit. That's the only reason why I'm letting you cosign. And I'm pretty sure you're gonna have Rich's back, so we'll probably get our money. But that also builds you credit, utility bills, school loans, things like that. So all that sort of building helps establish credit. It's a busy slide of how it works. And we really talked about this. So there's you. We're gonna go up with that. We're gonna go up. You're gonna apply for a loan. No, let's go down. Let's start going down. There's you. We're gonna say you have a credit card. Got your first credit card. Great. You're making payments to other lenders. That lender is a bank. That's Citibank. That's MasterCard. So you're making your payment to those lenders. There's that credit card. Then that lender is gonna report your payment. Yep, Rich made a payment. It was on time to the credit bureau. The credit bureau, there's three things. It's light in there, but the biggest three are TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Those are three of the biggest credit bureaus. So that lender is saying Rich made his payment. The credit bureau says, okay, great, we'll mark that down. He's got 4 points. Oh, he made another payment, he's got 5 points. Adding, here's my score. Now, next to them are credit agencies, and more complicated, but they're the ones who actually, it's called a FICO or a Vantage score. They give you the number. They give you your 700, whatever. And they're getting that information from the bureau. So just to get to that point, it's got to go through so many places just to develop your number. That's how really, if you have a card, that's how it works. And if you did not make payments on time, they're reporting that to the credit bureaus. Oh, he missed a payment. Ooh, dock him. tell the, the scoring agencies, oh, it's lower in score. Now, when you look up, I want to apply for a loan. So I have a credit card, I want a car. I go there to apply for a loan, the lender says, all right, I'm gonna run your credit. That's when they go to the credit bureaus to pull and request that credit report. And they're gonna request to get my score. So they get two things. They get my score, they're gonna get the one number, or 700, whatever it would be. And they actually get a report of all my payments that are on time, or any marks or dings. And it's almost like a report card. And it just keeps on scrolling. So they get two things. And that's how they make their decision. What interest rate am I gonna charge Rich? Do I even want to approve them? A lot of complexity. What's very counterintuitive of this entire thing, in order to build your credit score and get a higher number, you need to take out more and more debt to do so. And you have to manage your debt. And this is what makes that FICO score. This is what comprises it. You have a 700. Of that 700, 35% is my payment history. 30% is how much I actually owe on all my outstanding debt. Length of credit history is 15. New credit, 10. Credit mix of how many different types of credit do I have? Credit card, mortgage, student loans, personal loan, all that. How much do I have? I get more points the more I have. That's weird. So if I have all this debt out there, I'm gonna get my total 10% of that score. Payment history, on-time payments, I'm getting the whole 35. That's the one that we need to really focus in on, and I'll break those down. This is the biggest part of your credit score. If you take nothing away from this, at least make on-time payments. Because if you miss it, that's what's gonna be the most impactful on that score. So late payments, and then how late? Are you 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? Your case students, your no days, right? You're gonna make sure that it's on time. How long ago were the payments? That it might dip your score down for a little bit. Eventually, you'll build back after you can establish some credits. But how long is it going to take to come back depends on how bad it dropped. Bankruptcies, elections, your money gets sent there. But payment history, on time, you're good. That's the biggest part of your score. The next thing is 30%, amounts that you owed. So how much credit are you using? This is also very counterintuitive. You get a total of 30% total. If I have a credit card and it's $1,000 limit, if I use 30% or under, I get my 30%. Think of 30-30. So $300, it's 30%. If I use under that and pay it back on time every single day, now I'm getting my 30% and my 35. If I use $500 or max it out at 1,000, even if I pay it on time every single month, I get docked points because my usage is over 30%. So it's sort of weird how that works, because wait a second, you want me to build credit by taking out this and paying it back, and if I do, you're gonna dock me? Yes, because by spending the limit tells me that Rich is a spender. And I don't like, because he's getting pretty aggressive, he's topping the roof every single time. I don't like that. I'd rather Rich just do 30%, because that gives me as a lender wiggle room. Okay, good, you're not using too much, I'll give you more. So interesting how that works. Ways to sort of get around it. If you're like, well, I need $1,000 every month because that's my expenses. Well, take out another credit card maybe. Don't use it. But now you have more usage. Now you just upped your usage. So I still spent $1,000, but now maybe this card has 5,000 on it. Now I'm under the 30%. So it's like nothing changed. But if they're going to play a game for me, I'll play a game for them. How to do that. So interesting, but that's really the second biggest one. Length of history, 15%, it's really easy. Just don't close the first credit card or whatever you have. You don't have to use it. Sometimes they will go in default. As far as like, if you don't use it for 3 years, they think you died and they just close your account. They'll probably send you some letters, but they'll eventually close it. So we always say maybe every quarter or every year or twice a year, buy a pack of gum, pay it off, and then put that one back in your lock drawer. It's active. You have the usage. You have it, it's $1,000. You have that as carrying, and you build the length of your history. You start to close that, you get docked. 10% new credit. So this is interesting too. Sometimes if you open a new line, it might ding you a little bit, but then eventually it builds back. And it's because you're opening a new line, you're getting more credit, and it's mixing up that credit. So it will help you with a new credit, and then a mix, and this is where I said mortgage, credit cards, the more different types of credit. They think that you're responsible, you can handle all these different things, we'll give you your 10%. If I just had a credit card and that was it, even though everything else is good, I won't get that $850. Because I might not get the full 10%. So it's just really weird. That's why sometimes that $850, you don't really want it, because that means I have to have a lot of debt. I have to be spending a lot, you know, keep on getting my new credit mix, and it's just like, it might not be worth it. And I guess, the other thing is, you don't need technically credit. If you had cash to pay for everything, I don't need a loan for a car, I'll pay it in cash. I don't need a loan for a house, I'll pay it in cash. Most likely, that's just really not practical. Or sometimes you wouldn't want to, because if I can get a loan on a car paying 3% interest back, and I said the average was 8% in the stock market, I can sort of arbitrage my money. I will take out this loan for the car. I'll only pay 3%. I'll space this over 5 years, and then I'll be in the market with what I would have gave them cash. And if I'm earning 8%, then that's a win-win. Now, I'm gonna caveat that by saying anything you put in the market could go up and down. So it's gotta be money that you don't need at that time. But even if you found a savings account for 4%, that we just looked at the high yields, and my car loan was 3%, then I'll go for it. Put the rest of it in the savings, get the 4%, and just pay the 3%. You still win in that scenario. So that was just a quick rundown of credit. Questions on credit?
When you apply for credit cards, what are like they looking for, or like, is there any reason they would like reject you and whatnot?
Yeah, that's literally right here. So that's you going up the top. You apply for, it says loan.
Like when you get your first credit card or something, would there be a reason why they would?
Yeah, so when you apply for that first credit card, the lender is going to pull your credit report and your score. It's gonna come back and it's gonna say, you don't have it, right? You don't, and so that's where it's like, well, they might deny you of that card. And you're like, well, how am I supposed to get a credit card to build my credit, right? If you're gonna deny me, and that's where this sort of slide says, well, maybe you gotta get that secure card first. So maybe you can say, hey, that's fine if you're gonna deny me, but can I get a secure card? Where you would give them maybe like $500 first, and then they give you that amount that you could spend. And now, after a year, you come back, I have my real card now, because now you do have credit history. Now you do have one from that secure card. Or if you have, parents or siblings or whomever, and you can say, can I be an authorized user? If they have good credit, they'll issue a card. Usually they'll issue a credit card, but now it's in a joint account. It's not just you, it's you plus whoever else is on it. And you're getting on-time payments, hopefully because of that, credit usage, hopefully because of that. So that's all impacting your score. But that's why you don't want to, if you know that so-and-so maxes their credit card and never makes their payments, you don't want to do that, because now it's going to go down your credit. And then when you go to the lender, they're going to say, well, you have a credit score 300 because you were an authorized user. So yeah, those are just some tips of how you can, school loans. I don't know if you have any loans, but if you have school loans, through case, you're sort of building your credit already. And so when you graduate, you might have a good score, and it might be in the system, and then they would give you a credit card. Yep. So
There are like credit cards you recommend for new, they have like student credit.
yeah,
cards
they
and
do.
things like that,
Do you have any banks on campus?
Yeah, or even in current banks. Yeah, there's is it PDC or
PNC.
PNC?
Yeah, because I know like when I went to Bowling Green, they had PNC, and they
Remember
have
there's like a truck
programs.
out there sometimes. You ever see that in front of Tink? And like you could talk with them too.
Yeah, they'll have specific programs for student cards where it might be lower limits. And so it's like, well, we're not gonna give you 10,000, but we know you're a student, and so they might make exceptions, that branch, and they know, they know the school. And so they might be more likely to say, we're going to make a special occasion for a student who's gonna be getting this, we'll give them a low limit, but we know they're going to school. And so that's another way to build credit. So work with some of your on-campus banks. I would just, stay away for any credit card that charges a fee. So there are annual fees on credit cards. Some of them don't have them. So you just wanna make sure that when you're talking to whomever, a bank or whatnot, that you wanna make sure there's no annual fee. That's what you want. I've seen fees $700 a year. Now you would say, why the heck would you pay that? Well, it's because of all the rewards, frequent flyer miles and stuff like that, where if you're someone who flies a lot or for business, they're getting back thousands in return. So they're actually getting more than what they have to pay. But like for a typical person like us, well, I'm not paying $700. I don't fly that much. It just doesn't make sense for me. So just make sure there's no fees associated with that. But yeah, but probably I would start, yeah, at school. Yeah. And I know we're bumping a little bit after time too. And so that ends that credit segment. Here, let me get through resources. I'll just end off on here. If you want to learn more about this stuff, because there's just so much. You saw in here, there's so many different topics and I could, jump to different ones, but books. So your library, go to your library or ebooks and Kindle stuff, but three of them that helped me out. I Will Teach You to Be Rich, it's SETI, Simple Path to Wealth, J.L. Collins, Set for Life, Scott Trench. Those books are great. They're sort of get you into what this stuff is. Some podcasts, I love podcasts as well. If you're other audio, the Clark Howard podcast. This last one is, you can't see it, but it's the Ramsey Show. And then the Wall Street Journal, Your Money Briefing. Those are good ones too. You could do some like Coursera free courses, take those online. And then here's some just newsletters so just a variety of different stuff.